One trucked. Welcome to the Historical Facts channel. Don't forget to rate the video by clicking the like button down below. During the Vietnam War, Viet Cong guerrillas employed creative defense strategies, including the placement of punji stakes, poisoned bamboo spikes, around their forward positions along the Cambodian border. U.S. Marines had their pet dog with them in Nguyen, Vietnam in 1968. The dogs were trained to assist the Marines in various tasks, such as searching for hidden explosives and weapons, as well as helping to protect the soldiers. In Iphon Phon, new recruits underwent physical examinations. Prior to this, the recruitment system in the North was voluntary, but in 1973 it was transformed into a mandatory conscription system. This image shows soldiers gathering and singing together after a long day of combat during Operation Yellowstone, a military operation conducted during the Vietnam War. It is important to highlight that even in the harsh conditions of war, people still find ways to connect and support one another. In April 1968, during the Pegasus operation of the Khe Sanh Battle, U.S. Army soldiers burned thatched huts. This was part of military actions to control the area and reduce the enemy's ability to operate in the region. Soldiers equipped with gas masks crouched down as they prepared for combat. Gas masks are used to protect soldiers from toxic agents, such as poisonous gas, which can be used by the enemy as a weapon. A Viet Cong guerrilla was ready in the Mekong Delta in 1970. She was armed and prepared to defend her land and people against enemy forces. In February 1968, during the Battle of Hue in Vietnam, refugees were crossing the river in search of safety. The Vietnam War had a profound impact on people's lives. Troops from the 2nd Battalion, 5th Marine Regiment, were conducting a sweep in Vietnam. They were escorted by tanks and had air support that devastated the jungle ahead of them. In October 1966, an artilleryman was searching for enemies while his helicopter patrolled the Mekong Delta. The helicopter was on a mission to monitor the area looking for signs of enemy activity. A missile launcher is a military weapon designed to fire high-precision missiles at distant targets. During the Vietnam War, the United States used missile launchers to support ground forces and conduct airstrikes against targets in North Vietnam. American soldiers were in action during the conflict in Vietnam, with a wounded comrade being helped downhill Timothy in April 1968. The image shows a soldier playing ping pong during a break, a popular game in the 1970s used as a means to help improve international relations between China and the United States at the end of the war. The image depicts Viet Cong guerrillas encountering the enemy in combat. This massacre occurred in the Mekong Delta, or the Plain of Jars, Vietnam, when Laotian guerrillas were involved in resistance activities against American and South Vietnamese military forces. In this scenario, the guerrillas are transporting critical supplies with the aid of elephants and children through the forests and mountains of Vietnam. The image shows an exhausted American infantry soldier on the ground, drinking water with his comrades near the Cambodia-Vietnam border in 1970. A victim of an American airstrike, the Cambodian guerrilla Deng A San Uol is being transported to an improvised surgical room. In the Vietnam War, it was common for soldiers to personalize their helmets during combat, using drawings, stickers, or other objects to distinguish themselves from one another or to express their personality and attitudes. This is a striking photo of soldiers' lives on the battlefield, showcasing the sacrifice and heart of these American Marines as they carry their injured comrades during a firefight near the demilitarized zone in Vietnam. The image captures the sadness and suffering caused by war and the loss of loved ones. It serves as a reminder of humanity and the human costs of war. As part of the Army's Special Photography Office, this photographer was on the front lines, capturing images of the harsh realities of war in Hue. He had the responsibility to document the conflict accurately and objectively. At the military base in Chu Lai, Vietnam, Two American medics were ready to attend to the wounds of a Viet Cong soldier who had just arrived by medevac helicopter. Although the enemy was considered an adversary in the war, the medics, as healthcare professionals, had an ethical duty to provide assistance to anyone in need. During the Vietnam War, American troops were seen near the Timot River in Vietnam, along with supply helicopters. These helicopters were crucial for the success of military operations in the region, providing supplies, air support, and transport for injured troops. This is a historical event that occurred during the Vietnam War. American jets were used to drop napalm bombs on Viet Cong positions with the aim of destroying their bases and reducing their combat capability. Tracer fire is a weapon used to illuminate the battlefield at night, allowing troops to conduct security checks and identify friends and foes. During the Vietnam War, American and South Vietnamese soldiers often conducted nighttime patrols using tracer fire to light their way. Animals, including dogs, were common on the battlefield during the Vietnam War. Many American soldiers developed affection for these animals and adopted them as mascots, taking them along on their patrols and missions. Helicopters were an essential part of military logistics during the Vietnam War, used to transport troops, supplies, and the wounded. The Chinook, a twin-rotor transport helicopter, was one of the most commonly used models by Americans during the war. The 9th Infantry Division of the United States was a military unit sent to Vietnam to support South Vietnamese forces against the Communist Viet Cong and North Vietnamese forces. In this context, they are armed with their rifles and firing at enemy troops. Ted Atchison is a photographer known for his images that captured significant moments in the history of the war. This photo is a record of a Vietnamese family whose home was destroyed during the Vietnam War. This is a depiction of a common scene during the Vietnam War. Armored helicopters were widely used by the United States Armed Forces to transport troops to the front lines and conduct air combat operations. Operation Cedar Falls was a significant military operation by the United States in the Vietnam War, which took place in January 1967. The operation aimed to destroy Viet Cong positions in the Iron Triangle region, north of Saigon. This photo was taken at the moment Paul S. Hernandez is examining the throat of a Vietnamese child during a medical assistance operation in the Xuan Vinh refugee resettlement camp in September 1967. Members of the military stand respectfully near the coffins of their fallen comrades at Tan Son Nhu Air Base. This scene depicts the solemnity and respect afforded to soldiers who lose their lives in combat. This American Marine was wounded during Operation Prairie near the demilitarized zone during the Vietnam War in October 1966. Soldiers from the North Vietnamese Army entered the Independence Palace in Saigon for the first time during the fall of Saigon in 1975. The fall of Saigon marked the final event of the Vietnam War. Hundreds of abandoned boots lined the roads around Saigon, left by soldiers of the Republic of Vietnam Army who removed their uniforms to hide their identities. This image captures the confusion and disorder of the fall of Saigon and the hurried escape of many soldiers. The image shows prisoners eating their meals in their cell at Con Son Prison, Vietnam, in 1970. Another image depicts an airplane dropping napalm on a small village, a chilling fact that occurred during a military operation. A tense and disturbing scene from the Vietnam War shows Captain Carlisle Bastia and his team interrogating elderly villagers near Pu Chin Hai in 1967. This image portrays revolutionary soldiers from the north rushing to engage the enemy in a battle near strategic Route 9 in southern Laos. Imagine a scenario where a soldier is on a mission in hostile territory. He must be discreet and protect himself at all costs to complete his mission successfully. To achieve this, he opts to camp among the bushes. In 1968, during the Vietnam War, the city of Uy Nu was the site of intense fighting between North Vietnamese and South Vietnamese forces, with U.S. support. As the fighting intensified in the streets, civilians were caught in the midst of violence and destruction. This is a realistic depiction of the Vietnam War, marked by intense conflict and atrocities. Amid this chaos and destruction, women were forced to sell their bodies to survive. Robert Francis Bacon was an officer in the United States Navy and a veteran of both World War II and the Vietnam War. After retiring from the Navy, Bacon continued to serve the community, actively participating in various veterans organizations and dedicating himself to charity. 4 Viet Cong prisoners were captured in a tunnel complex in the jungles of Vietnam. They were being held in a secure location, awaiting transfer to a prisoner of war camp in the Tan Dien area in 1967. During the Vietnam War, several Viet Cong female prisoners of war were captured and awaited transport to a release point. While waiting, they covered their heads with scarves or clothing, possibly as a form of protection against the sun or to preserve their identity. In 1973, many American soldiers were wounded in combat during the Vietnam War, including in the city of Hue. Jeremiah Porty was injured in battle and was carried back behind enemy lines for medical treatment. Amid the chaos and confusion of battle, Porty was carried by his comrades, with the sound of gunfire still echoing around them. During the Vietnam War, Marines played a significant role in many land and sea operations, including the capture and defense of coastal cities like Hue. During the Vietnam War, supplies and weapons were discovered in a network of Viet Cong tunnels. In response, a soldier decided to set fire to a nearby hut that was used by the Viet Cong for rice storage. 2 Viet Cong prisoners were taken to a forward command post and interrogated about enemy activity in the region. In May 1970, women in Vietnam participated in manual labor, including fishing. The Vietnam War and adverse economic conditions led many women to work in jobs that were once exclusive to men, as they were away at war. This is a scenario that took place during the Vietnam War, when bridges and other critical structures were often targets of airstrikes. Construction workers are gathered in a work area in Han Rom, in central North Vietnam, to discuss the repairs for the bombed bridge. Bontre. Of course, please provide the text you'd like me to translate, and I'll be happy to assist you.